The practice sessions here at Mount Panorama are, of course, more important than practice sessions you'll see at any other time in the season. A short time ago, this was a crucial one, and we throw to Neil Crompton and Matthew White.
Well, for some, this session is something of a shakedown for the shootout, especially, of course, for those top 10 qualifiers. The other qualifiers, those outside the shootout this afternoon, they've got a bit of a different perspective. What about this man? He had everything in focus yesterday. Greg Murphy became the man with the fastest ever V8 supercar lap around Mount Panorama at 2:07.95 in a mad scramble that chopped into the record books at the end of the qualifying session. I guess, Neil Crompton, the question is, are we going to see those kind of times? I know we won't see that mad scramble, but will we see those kind of times in this session?
It's possible. You never know. Each team has got their own program, but there tends to be a happy hour in these sorts of sessions. They'll still have some tyres to cycle. There's 6 sets of tyres, 24 tyres allocated this weekend. The idea is that you want to go into the shootout with a brand spanking new set, maybe with the very lightest of light rubs. But you'll see the times come down. Tanda, for example, at the moment has just done a 9.3, but for 30 of the cars in this field, it's the last decent chance to give both drivers some solid laps and to also make sure you end up with a car that's comfortable to drive around Mount Panorama. And that might seem like a strange term with a racing car, but you need to be able to stroke around here very quickly with a lot of rhythm and flow without having to use up the car. One of the Orcon cars has gone off there on the exit of the chase. And you'll hear a lot of drivers talking about that, trying to make sure that they've got a car that they know they can push hard without eating it up.
I've heard a report from the pits that there's a bit of smoke inside car 1. He's definitely backed off. Not quite sure what the problem is. Todd Kelly at the wheel. So maybe one of the boys down in pit lane will give us an update on what the situation is there.
Well, they're not going to know until they have a good look at it. And yeah, so for some of the runners in this little shootout at the moment, it's a bit strange. They'll probably divide the time, I think, Matthew, that between trying to fine-tune the car in its race configuration versus also just making sure it's pretty well tweaked for the shootout. Of course, in qualifying, you had the other advantage yesterday of having at least 50% of the traffic out of the way. So one of the obstructions to doing a good time in this session is that you've got all 40 cars out there, and with everybody in a different program and scrambled up on the track, it'll actually be quite difficult to get a good, clean, fast lap round here without somebody tripping you over.
It's interesting what you were saying about the guys having to get the cars comfortable. A number of the teams I was talking to this morning, they're all saying the same thing. Yeah, we're almost there, but the car's got to be easy to drive. It's got to be easy to drive, otherwise over 161 laps, you're fighting more than you need to.
Greg Rust in pit lane. Rusty?
Matty just standing by down at the Holden Racing Team pit waiting for Todd Kelly to come back in. They spent a bit of time at the beginning of this session changing front springs in this car. Mark Scaife rated it about an 8 to an 8.5 out of 10 at the moment, car 1. He reckons they can extract more from it. And they're trying to generate a better flow in the car across the top of the mountain, make it a nicer race car in his eyes. Now, I'm just wondering in that change whether perhaps the car, the wheels may be hitting the shotgun panel now and generating some of that smoke that they're talking about. We'll have a clearer picture when car 1 comes in.
No, not really after I started the cruise round, but definitely worth checking.
It's headed your way right now, Greg. So Todd Kelly pulls into the very first garage in pit lane. Holden Racing.
Just came up sort of from behind the seat past the driver's door. It smelled a little bit oily type of thing.
This is what practice sessions are for, aren't they? You want to see these
And it's important,
bugs here and iron them out.
extremely important for the drivers to tell the technical crew every single thing.
It's not oily, that's why I turned the trans pumps off. Oh, there was like this oily smelling smoke coming in through the car here.
Mechanics now having a look under the car to try and find the source of that oil smoke that Todd Kelly was talking about.
Possible causes?
Oh, look, you could run
It's
off.
stable, it's pretty good.
You could rattle off a pretty long list. You know, the cars, from a television viewpoint, we tend to see them as an assembled unit, all looking beautiful on the racetrack. Of course, these race cars spend the majority of their time disassembled. You know, if you go down to the pit bunker at any given moment over this weekend, you see a car that is just in 1,001 pieces. So finger trouble is often the cause.
at Stone Brothers Racing. There's a little bit of work going on as well, and Daryl Beattie can fill us in on that, Daryl.
Yeah, it's interesting wandering up and down pit lane at the moment. The Morris team also were doing some front shock changes in that car, and now I'm up at Stone Brothers and doing exactly the same. I know yesterday afternoon they changed the whole shockers in this car, but it had a harder spring in the front, and they're doing it again right now. I'm not sure exactly what spring they've gone to, but a lot of teams playing with the front end of the car.
Daryl, I reckon that there's a lot of teams and a lot of combinations out there at the moment that have got pretty good cars for the one-lap sprint, but I reckon there's a lot of unhappy cars when it comes to the ongoing performance of these vehicles. And I had a good look around the circuit in the last couple of days, and there's some very nervous motor cars, particularly with regard to the way they do or don't look after their rear tyres. And that's going to be a real factor here. It's no good having a car that'll punch out a 7 or an 8 for a lap or two and then burn you down into the 11s or 12s a few laps later. That's what they'll be focused on at the moment.
Macro and Hossack, car number 5, the Ford Performance Racing entry. These guys are now hovering in 21st position on the practice timesheets at 2:13.02. Their best today. They've been into the 2:10s in qualifying. They've qualified 25th for the race.
2:10.1, the best time. I was talking to the boys this morning, actually. Pretty comfortable, pretty happy with the car. They're both pretty evenly matched in terms of their individual driver lap times. Stephen Johnson.
This car yesterday down at the Chase, Stephen Johnson and Warren Luff, was the car that spent the longest at the 7,500 hard cut on the rev limiter, just going through the Chase. And Dick Johnson was one of the people at the end of last year that was suggesting to Tiga and Avesco that they run a taller diff ratio here. At the moment, we use the tallest of the 3 diffs available for the category at this racetrack. It's a 3.25, and they're just literally running out of legs at the bottom of the straight. It's just a little over 290 kilometres an hour. It depends exactly how you got your gear calibrated as to the precise number, but call it 293, 294 or whatever. But Stevie was on the limiter for, I reckon, a good 150 metres, which is not a particularly nice thing for an engine when they're so finely tuned and so finely balanced. They go out of harmony when they're banging away like that, and if you do it for 161 laps, they have a chance to rattle itself to death.
This man will be the first man out in the shootout this afternoon. Stephen Johnson, qualified 10th. He'll be partnered with Warren Luff, the Sydney racer, and they finished 16th at Sandown. But of course, everything in this practice session pretty much happens. Look at the wiper creeping up as the car gets up to 296 kilometres an hour, maximum speed down Conrod Straight. Everything happens in pit lane. Daryl, you've got a question.
Yeah, it's interesting, Crowley. I'm down here watching. I'll just come around to the Winterbottom car. It's come in. They're playing on the rear end on this one as well, but completely different to the front of that car. I noticed, I spoke to Mark this morning. He's saying his Konica car, the AU, felt a little more positive and plush around here, but it's probably, you'll see it better than me, Cromley, here through these pictures, but it looks like they're playing with like a twin weight rear spring. They're taping them together, so they're 2 different springs.
Yeah, what they've got there, I didn't actually look at it ultra carefully, but it's either a keeper spring, which effectively gives you a dual spring rate. That didn't sound good. A lot of people are going through this process at the moment, and even this late in the week, there's still a lot of fiddling going on. So it goes back to what we were saying before about cars that are unhappy, and the BA Falcon, most of the key performers in these vehicles are saying that the car just gives me that nervous feeling at the rear at the wrong spot, and both Bradley and John were talking about that. JB doing a bit of motocrossing there. It's pretty radical, wasn't it? And John and Phil Curtis, his engineer, were more comfortable with the car in this case than, say, for example, Bradley, and he said, it just makes me feel a little bit nervous in the rear. I don't know whether or not we're going to be able to stroke it as nicely as I want to. He's just done an 8.8, by the way, so at the moment there's not a lot of stroking going on. He's just flat out in the thing. These guys will be strong again this weekend, as they have been here in the past couple of years. The combination in this team represents the fastest ever qualifying and the fastest ever lap record. Look at that. Yeah. Just about out of road there, JB. He was one of the guys that came through the Chase yesterday here in 3rd gear. Many people use 2nd.
Oh, look at the air time on the Aussie Male Falcon.
She had to think about staying up there, didn't it? Down boy.
That was was a 2:08.88 lap for John Bowe. Makes him the fastest in this practice session at the moment. Paul Wheel in the Team Brock car number 50 entry is second at 2:09, and Scaife and Kelly's car is in the ditch.
Wow.
There's shit everywhere, guys.
Todd Kelly behind the wheel
All over the track.
on the entry to pit lane.
Well, it looks like that problem he was talking about has got worse.
No, he said there was something all over the track.
Yeah.
Something's going on back up the road there.
Oh, what's going on here? Car 1, absolute blistering speed in qualifying.
Couldn't even see in the rearview mirror coming down Condor.
I think he's talking about this smoke continuing inside the car. He said there's rubbish everywhere inside. Rusty, can you give us an update?
Well, Marco, they're a bit quiet on this issue at the moment, as you can appreciate. Mark Scaife chatting with Todd Kelly there now, but there's a definite smell of oil coming out of the car. And at this point in time, perhaps a bit of a feeling or a sense of disappointment in this team. They don't want this at this time of the day and in the build-up to the 1,000.
Remember that they don't have to nominate which car they're going to be in until midday Saturday. Although it would be highly unlikely at this point now to do a car change. So whatever the issue is, they'll fix it. There'll be some logic to all this, but it's unsettling, it's annoying at this point in time. All of the key teams and drivers are cross-entered in this race. So there are 4 drivers entered in car 1 and car 2. They can switch them around accordingly. I want to know why Todd was what looked to be sort of off the road. So is it hosing oil on its rear tyres? And is that what carted him off the road, or why was the awkward pit entry then?
Well, they're still trying to discuss it down in the Holden Racing Team car number 1 garage. They've got their hands full already on race weekend. Will they get it fixed? Do they know what the problem is yet? We'll try and find out after this break on the Bob Jane T-Marts 1000 coverage on Network 10. You're about to see what disturbed Todd Kelly so much in the number 1 Holden Racing Team Commodore. That was the smoke he spoke of. Was in the cabin as well. Now, he overshoots the entry to pit lane here. Has to make a dramatic left-hand turn. Not sure about the legality of that, but more importantly, there's a safety issue as well if there's oil coming out of that car. So, in hindsight, it might not be a bad idea to get that thing off the track. Very gingerly taking this car back into pit lane. He was concerned about it. They looked at it, couldn't find any immediate problems. Now they are all over this car. And sure, if they do find a solution, that's great. But the problem is they've lost about half an hour of precious practice time. Greg Rust has Todd Kelly.
Well, Todd Kelly, it's obviously been a bit of a chance to talk with the engineers. Any school of thought on what might have caused car 1 to be forced to go at the back?
Well, there was a fair bit of smoke coming inside the car. It smelled a little bit like gear oil. So really, at this stage of the game, you know, I didn't want to stay out there and press on just for the sake of, you know, doing a time or whatever. So they've got it back in the garage, and if it's a simple fix, we should have it back out at the end of the session.
Bit of a nervous moment for you, I guess, when the smoke came inside the cabin, was it?
Yeah, I got on the brakes pretty quick and pulled into pit lane. So I did, you know, if it was leaking a fair bit of oil, not to get any on the track. But you know, it's not a real drama. We should get on top of it.
Good on you. Better you found out about it now too, hey?
Exactly.
Cheers.
Definitely better the devil you know. Saturday morning glitch is much better than a Sunday afternoon hiccup. And as Billy mentioned, the HRT crew all over car number 1, inside and out. To race against time. Uh-oh, Larry Perkins up at the top of the mountain and crunch at the cutting. Oh, big impact from car number 11. And he's a disappointed man inside the cockpit. Oh, it didn't look as though there was anyone else around him. The question is, what led to that? He's put a severe dent both on the front of his car and also that gate there at the on the right-hand side of the track. So we can expect a fairly lengthy delay. Questions. How did it all happen? Lock up. A little bit further back. Oh, touches the wall.
It's just on the braking approach to the cutting, which is turn 4, and just prior to that, we used to run right up against a rock face there at turn 3. There's a wall there now, but if you get wide here, Matthew, you can see how dirty the track is offline. There's no grip out there at all, and for some reason Larry is well wide of the race line. You can see skid marks in the... Has he touched the inside wall? No, it appears not. But he's very, very wide here. He's way off the race line. He can't stop it. He's got his foot on the clutch. He's got his foot jammed on the brake pedal. It's got it all locked up, and it has slammed that wall. And he would be pretty upset and frustrated with himself at that outcome. The other question mark in my mind is, did it have a sticky throttle, or was it partially jammed? We might be able to resolve some of those questions later.
Well, we've certainly answered the question that there was no other cars involved. Was it human error? What was it? Maybe the Castrol Perkins Commodore teammate of Larry, Stephen Richards, can help us understand. Richo, you got us?
Yeah, mate, no problem.
Do you know what's happened so far?
No, look, I don't know. It looks like LP might have just gone in a little bit hot, and then he's locked it inside front. The impact with the side wall actually was nothing. Looking at the vision, it was the gate and the stand post where the gate locks. It looks like it's suffered the most damage.
Stevie, it's Neil. Did you hear from Larry? Has he given you any indication as to what's occurred?
No, we didn't, mate. I mean, obviously he was on the radio there, but we didn't actually catch it. As you know, the cutting's a bit of a bad spot for reception, so probably that was the reason.
No suggestion of a sticky throttle or a jam throttle or anything like that?
No, mate, haven't heard. Okay. Haven't heard. No.
Okay, mate, thank you for helping us clear up that, Stephen Richards, and hopefully they can get that beast pieced up together in time for, of course, race day. So another replay here, and as we've seen, such a heavy impact, and I think we can hear Larry's reaction.
He said something about concentration.
Sorry, fellas, I lost concentration.
Human error. Lost concentration.
Well, if you run wide up there and get into that grey stuff, there is no coming back. You cannot get these cars back. They're approaching that bit of the track at an enormous close rate. You get back up to 190 k's on the approach to the cutting, and across that, what we describe as the rock face, it's 165 k's. Pictures from the Holden Racing Team garage where the work continues on car 1, and it looks to me like they're in the gearbox area. There were people in the cockpit before. It suggests to me they're dropping the gearbox out of that car, which could be the reason for the oil leak. And Robbie Starr, Jeff Gregg, Mark Scaife.
I got to say, Scaife doesn't look as
I don't think
worried as what we think.
It's a big deal. Look at the damage. This is a gate into one of the residential properties here at Mount Panorama, and this session is not going to be able to continue while the fence is in that state of disrepair. And
that big
Stevie was right.
Yeah.
You know, as it rattled down the concrete wall, that wasn't a big deal, but it's this bit of railway sleeper or railway line, or whatever that is there, that's the thing that has done the damage. The fence has folded back, but it was the little stanchion that has really done the damage on it.
Mark Scaife watching on as work continues feverishly on car 1. Not what you want to see.
The Brains Trust going to work and the crew going to work on car number 1. So drama as you'd expect. The mountain is a mess at the moment, especially at the cutting where Larry Perkins had big time impact in car number 11. Car number 1, they've got their own troubles. We'll take a break from Bathurst, the Bob Jane T-Marts 1000 on your home of motorsport, the biggest weekend we've got of the year. Stay with us.
This driver, this team knows how to win at Bathurst. They've done it many times before, but it will take all that experience now to recover from a very nasty practice crash. A crash that, in fact, caused the cancellation of that very important 4th session. We have some news on that. We'll be able to bring you live the second half of that session. There's been some rescheduling today because it's very important for the teams to get out there and practice, in particular for the various co-drivers who've had very few laps in the car. Unscheduled session. Well, I saw Brad Jones, I think it was, behind the wheel, pulling back out onto the circuit, and the Better Electrical car is still stuck on that runoff area. This is a very tense time for co-drivers and indeed for the people in the pits.
one, wasn't it? With Brad Jones in car 21 and then Dean Canto in car 66. Both of them got out of that okay. 16.5 minutes remaining now in this session. And the question is, as Marcus Ambrose goes right up close to the wall, the question is, Neil, what are they going to achieve in this? They're probably going to turn about 8 laps in total, given the time span.
Yes, one of the interesting things about this racetrack is that with the lap length, 6.2 kilometres and 2 minutes and 10 seconds, say, for example, on average, by the time you do an out lap, an in lap, deal with some traffic, the usable, workable time that you have is extremely short, narrow, so the opportunity to get things done is really difficult. So to answer the question depends again on where you're at in your program at the moment. We saw, for example, that Brad Jones went out in the Aussie Mail entry, but the plan was to put JB in the car late in the session, so Bradley would do 3 or 4 laps and then JB would get in. And what's happened with the way the day's unfolded, and particularly after Larry's incident with this unscheduled practice session, the continuance of the earlier session, is that now this becomes a warm-up for those that are in the top 10, which is now the top 9. It'll be something of a genuine warm-up for them prior to the actual shootout. Of course, for the other 30 guys, it's the final opportunity to really do any sort of decent laps where you can make adjustments to the car. And I've been down to the garages, there's still a lot of work going on to cars, so people try and sort them out. Oh, Bradley with the rear brakes locked on the way to turn 1, and decides that it's better to get out of the pedal and not damage the tyres, and he would not have expected to see the 66 car down there at all. And one of the things that's not apparent from television is just how bad your rearward and peripheral vision is in the cars, Matthew. Very, very difficult to see out of. So the first time Bradley would have seen that would have been almost when the yellow car was on top of him.
There's Paul Wheel for Team Brock, pairing up, of course, with Jason Bright. In pit lane is a former winner of Bathurst, Thomas Mazira, with Greg Rust.
Well, Matty, their car with Paul Dumbrell at the wheel was the first one out in this session. What things are you testing? It's on a full tank of fuel, Thomas.
Well, we filled the car up in the morning, and we had a sort of little bit of problems going over the bumps. You know, the car wasn't as nice as it was yesterday. Then we just do a little changes, try to tune it in. You know, it's not a big deal, but you like to be very comfortable over 161 laps.
How are you enjoying being back behind the wheel? We saw you at Sandown, now of course here.
Oh, it's great. You know, it's not easy if you drive only like a couple of weekends in a year, and well, I still enjoy it. And as long as I get a good drive and a good team, then no, it's good. Like you do 5 laps, and after 5 laps, you sort of think, well, it's pretty good still, and I love it. Yeah.
There you have it, boys. Sounds like Thomas can't complain.
Do you want me to do it? I'll have a lunge at it. He's Czechoslovakian, but he's spent a lot of time in the UK, and of course he's been here for many years. You walk up to Thomas any day of the week and say, "How's it going?" He goes, "Can't complain." Compline? Compline. He's a great bloke, a very good race driver. He's been on the podium here on many occasions, and he's just the right antidote for that number 8 car at Castrol Perkins. He's a perfect foil for Paul Dumbrell, who did a great job yesterday. His time in that car was exceptional, and I think they'll actually be a pretty good combination in this race tomorrow.
It showed us how competitive that last burst of times was in the qualifying session, because that time that Paul Dumbrell did was a real sexy time at the time, a 2:09.1, and everybody was quite happy with it. And then he ended up in 16th in qualifying, courtesy of the record books copping a pounding from Murphy, Scaife, Jones, Bow and Co at least. So car 75, the Anthony Tratt, Paul Stoke-Hill entry.
And it's Paul at the wheel at the moment. A bit of congestion here. Scaife's in car 1. This is the reality of this race meeting, dealing with traffic. There's a lot of it. 40 cars line up, 80 drivers, and much of the field are having really only, in some cases, their second run, certainly in the big game in V8 Supercar this year. Quite a few rookies and a number of guys that we don't see a lot of. And by contrast, a man like this is going to be driving at 11 tenths every lap with no margin, and you have to be wary of that. Here's the Cat Ford. This is in the braking approach to turn 2. If you've just joined us in our coverage of the practice lead up to the Bob Jane T-Marts 1000, Larry Perkins had an incident in the earlier practice session which necessitated a red flag. It was right in this area up at turn 4, the cutting He made a mistake, got offline and punched the fence so badly that the session had to be shut down for that fence to be repaired, and so the balance of the session is now unfolding before you. And for the first time ever in the history of this event, we're now seeing the shootout occur late in the day, and that gives us the opportunity on Network 10 to broadcast it to you live, which is fantastic this year. And we've got a Strathfield replay here of a little bit of nonsense as one of the walk-on cars goes around. I think it's car 20 on the exit of the Chase the Way Johnson car. Very easy to do, Matty, because the ripple strip on the exit there on the left is quite aggressive in its profile, and they do a beautiful job of presenting the track when we come up at this time of the year each year, but that means they repaint all the curbing, so it's all freshly painted in red and white, which makes it very slippery.
In this little practice session that we've got, Mark Scaife with a 2:08.64 is setting the best times. The countdown to this afternoon's shootout is underway.
This is Andy Trio in the second of the T-Mart cars. Not his first time at the mountain, and a very, very experienced international touring car racer. But it's never easy trying to build up experience in a V8 supercar of Mount Panorama. He would not have had many laps in that car this weekend. Cameron McLean has been mostly behind the wheel. But another interesting point, gentlemen, as we look at three cars at the top of the timesheets in the 2.8s. Time is not as important, of course, as in qualifying. There's all kinds of agendas being run out there as we look at Maxie Wilson. But it's interesting to note that Paul Wheel, I'm pretty sure, put down a 2.8, third fastest so far in the session. And that's good news for Jason Bright because he was qualifying in the 2.9. So maybe they found some speed in that car, and it's also evidence that the driver pairing is strong.
Billy, the other point of significance, I think, in this session at the moment, looking at the times, and Ambrose has just gone quickest at a 2:08.41, is that Scaife's done an 8.6. Now, that will be representative of a genuine what you can do out the gate with cold tyres on your out lap, your flying lap, and then in. So he's effectively just knowing, and that's what I talked to Mark about earlier in the day, he likes to truthfully rehearse precisely what's going to happen in the shootout. So, and he said at that stage that he felt that a mid-8 was probably what you might achieve when you come out the gate cold. Greg?
Down here with Garth Tander, Neil. He wasn't actually expected to go out in this 20-minute session, but you've been out for a couple of laps, Garth. Tell us why.
Oh, we just went out to warm up the car for the shootout, basically. We didn't put in a quick lap just to get everything nice and warm because beforehand there was going to be a 5-hour break between our last practice and the actual shootout. So this 20-minute session was actually quite a good opportunity to go out and warm the car up. We didn't want to do a real flying lap because we've got our race engine in now, so we're just looking after that, and we'll give it heaps in the shootout and then see where we end up.
You've got a nice smile on your face at the moment. You feel quite good in this car by the sounds of it.
Oh, the car's fantastic, really is, and we were 5th yesterday in qualifying before the shootout, and to be honest, I probably didn't do the car justice. I didn't drive it hard enough because the car itself is absolutely fantastic and it's really, really good. So whether it's good enough to do a low 8 in a one-lap shootout situation, I'm not sure, but went out this morning at a 9.2 on full tank, so I'm pretty happy with that. So looking forward to tomorrow.
A good run in the shootout, Gar.
Yeah, thanks, Rusty.
There he is, Garth Tander. Just to update you on a couple of other quick little pieces of information, guys. Some guys in pit lane here, various teams chasing aerodynamics at the moment. Oscar Fiorinotto has been on the radio at Team Dynamic. They're making some rear wing adjustments to those cars in the hunt for aero. The one to watch, though, Mark Scaife, that strip that runs across the front radiator, Neil, which normally has been quite high during the week. They've dropped it a notch. Perhaps that's helping Mark Scaife bank some good times right now. Aerodynamics.
Well, aero plays a huge role at this racetrack just simply because of the speed of the cars, and lots of little games are played with the radiator intakes and the brake ducting, the rear wing. This is Scaife. Let's have a listen.
Hey, mate, nothing's changed.
Because some of the teams are spending so much time on the rev limiter coming down the straight in 6th gear, they've elected to run full rear wing on the car in the effort to just make more grip and then re-trim around that. If you wander up and down the pit lane at the moment, Matty, the heap of cars have just got as much rear wing on them as you can get. Have a good look at the back of this car, but just looking at the angle from where I'm sitting at the moment, it looks pretty aggressive.
The lap before this one was Scaife's fastest. And Garth Tander mentioned that he would probably struggle to get down into the low 8s. This is David Thexton's entry, car 99, with Stephen Voigt this weekend, taking the shortcut through the chase. A 2:08.214 now for Scaife. Ambrose is second fastest. Remember, these times really aren't that important. But Paul Radicic is showing some good form in third with a 2:08.48.
See that amount of wheel work across the face of the chase down there. Big bumps. The cars, when you stand there and watch them, are really electrifying. Moving around so much, just a whisker under 300 kilometres an hour. Scafie calling on the radio, alerting the pit that he's in.
Practice change.
And the line across the road here indicates just there behind the car where you need to engage the 40 kilometre an hour pit speed limit. And this is a full change rehearsal with Todd Kelly going in, Scafie leaping out.
Greg's there, Rusty.
Exactly right, guys. The whole idea is we heard them come into pit lane. You could hear the team saying to them, this is just about practice.
Go. Hang on.
They're actually going to let Todd go, which is a surprise. The way they were talking was that it would just be a rehearsal.
Yeah, sometimes what they end up doing, Greg, is just an out lap, which immediately transposes to an in lap. So you do the whole cycle so that it's realistic. We are in the dying moments.
So just try and have a bit of a feel.
It's all just running through the systems check, isn't it?
So there's plenty of wakers out there, mate, so be careful.
That's Jeff Grett from the Holden Racing team just suggesting that there's some slightly less talented operators out there. Be careful. And at this time of day, you can't afford to risk the equipment. The changes that are made to the cars can be... let's have a look at this replay before we get into that. What's come adrift there? No idea. A bit of something.
Something black.
Changes that are made to the cars during the course of a typical race meeting like this, Matty, will be very tiny in the eyes of some, but they can have quite a profound impact on the behaviour of the car. So it's very important for both drivers to continue to get a feel for the way in which the car evolves. Otherwise, what happens is if one guy spends too much time in the car at the expense of the other, when the low time driver gets back in the car, it comes as a heck of a shock. And all of a sudden you go, whoa, hang on, where have you taken this car and why? So it's important, even if it's just a lap. And Todd's doing a lot of miles this year. He's got a big race program, test program, and he's in tune with Mark on this car, but he needs to stay with him in his mind in preparation for this race. You don't want to get out there after the opening stint and leap in at about 11:30 when it's your stint and find that you're suddenly driving an apple when yesterday you had an orange.
Flexibility is one of the key issues of this weekend, and it's been proven today that you have to be willing and able to go with the flow here at the mountain, not when you're on the track, not just on the track, but off the track as well. This session, for instance, split up into two. Bradley Jones. Takes it across the top of the mountain through the dipper. Spectacular piece of road.
He's been a bit crook overnight. A bit of a problem in the stomach department. Might be something to do with Bradley's illustrious diet. But he's okay today and he'll be fine in the race car, but out of the car it's nagging him a little bit at the moment.
Out of Forest Elbow, down Conrod Straight, and as car number 21 fires along this world-famous piece of the circuit, we can remind you that the shootout this afternoon is at 3:55 Australian Eastern Standard Time. That means it's coming up soon on the mountain. The one-lap dash. Who will get pole position for tomorrow's big race? We'll find out shortly as our coverage continues.
Well, if your fans of Marcus Ambrose and Russell Ingall relax, you would have noticed that number 9 is on that Stone Brothers racing car. Pretty sure it was Mark Noski behind the wheel, getting some important track time in. His co-driver Mark Winterbottom, of course, fresh from winning the Konica race, so he was busy enough, I'd imagine. Mark getting some, that is Mark Noski, they're both Marks, getting some important time in the car there for the race, and doesn't look like severe damage there. But still, there's always a little bit of work to do as we approach the business end of the Bob Jane T-Marts 1000. As Matthew White mentioned, the top 10 shootout for the first time live this afternoon, coming up very, very soon. In the meantime, let's hear from Max Wilson.
Max, been out for this shortened session. Now you've taken the car away. What's the latest?
Yeah, for us it was a bit shorter than it was supposed to be. We had a power steering problem, so I did a couple of flaps and I had to stop because I had no power steering. So I had to fix that up for tomorrow.
And so obviously that's taken away a bit of an opportunity, but I guess it's better to find that out now rather than later.
Oh, for sure, it's better to find out this today than tomorrow, and it's just another big problem, but I couldn't drive because without power steering gets really tough, and but everything will be all right for tomorrow, definitely.
Okay, good luck.
Thank you.
Well, as we look at the Shell Helix Racing team, Dick Johnson's team, for whom fortunes have changed quite recently. Stevie Johnson there in the top 10 shootout a little later on. Lots of fun and excitement here, but there is one name that stands out above many, many others at Mount Panorama, and that is Richards. Whether it's Jim, who is one of the most successful racers here of all time, or his son Stephen, who's very rapidly heading in the same direction, you can bet that it'll be a great battle, whether they're together or whether they're apart. It's never easy being a dad. Being the racing dad of a racing son is something else. For Steve and Jim Richards, it's something special.
Basically, I was still, well, not as I am now, still driving all the time and really didn't have any time to even take them to the track sometimes. So every now and again when I wasn't doing anything, I'd take them down, but I'd unload the carts and leave them in the pits, and I'd drive around and watch from the spectator area.
Too many dads getting in fights out there.
Yeah, oh, it's amazing, yeah. So I'd go around and wait most of the day, but Steve would look after his cart, and he got friendly with another couple of guys there, and they'd do the racing, I didn't interfere. Then when it was time to go home, I'd roll the car and trail around, we'd load up and head home.
Jim didn't always have time to take the reins of his son's career. He was often too busy with his own. In hindsight, he's not sure that's a bad thing.
First of all, you've got to put all you have into something that you love doing. And if it comes along too easily, where everything's given to you, you don't really appreciate it. And that was the way that I did it.
Dad was helping out wherever he could. It wasn't a case of just footing it on my own. There was many times when Dad could help, he did.
They have experienced great things together. A rich relationship that has characterised some of our finest motorsport moments. Since Steve began his professional career, they have raced against each other and with each other, sharing cars, teams and podiums.
In a sport where there's quite a big generation gap between us, we've shared a pretty monumental achievement together, and that's fantastic.
It's easy to find praise for Jim Richards. Go anywhere in pit lane. Gentleman Jim, the dial-in driver, the man who put the pro in professional, the consummate team player. His son is building a similar reputation. Ask them about Bathurst, and the answer is always we, not me.
When you're part of a team and you're a co-driver brought in to do the job, I mean, the best thing is to let them get on and do their job. I mean, wherever I've driven with Mark and with Steve, for that matter, and John Bow, any of the other drivers,